Hello everybody, welcome to a very exciting tutorial series. Hopefully it's a very exciting one. My name is Wakas. I am the lead artist of Renegade-x, and we're going to be looking into how to bring in a vehicle into Renegade-x from the very start. So we're going to start off with a model, and I'm not actually going to make a model, I have one prepared already, and we're going to go ahead and bring it in game. Right now I have the medium tank open up, which is one of the example assets included in the SDK. So I'm going to start by just going over what's in here. There's a lot to take in. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the Manage Layers window. I have 3D Studio S Max. 3D Studio Max, not 3D Studio S Max. 2011. This is a version we've been using for just about, for as long as we've been working on Renegade-x. And that is because we've been using the Rengade-x plugin for Unreal Development Kit, which comes in with the UDK. It's let's go ahead and find it. So if you go to the SDK, so you can find the Rengade-x plugin in the SDK folder, binaries, Rengade-x. You will find whichever version of Max or Maya you want to use. X is side 2 if that's your preference. It only goes up to 2011 because after that Epic Games switched over to just using FBX formats for importing and exporting their models. We're going to be using, or at least I'm going to be using, Rengade-x. You can use FBX as well if you want to. It really doesn't matter in the end. We're just going to be exporting out a file. You're going to import it into storage. So you can see how you install plugins in whatever application you use, or you could just export out as FBX when we get there. So yeah, so opening up the layers manager, let's take a look at what's in here. There's a ton of layers that are actually hidden. That's because those aren't really components that we're going to be taking a look at, or we're not going to be setting up those components, at least not for this tutorial. So there's a lot of hidden layers in here, including blend shapes or morph targets, whatever you want to call them. So these are all blend shape target meshes that this guy is picking up, and each one of these show a different sort of damage model. So you can see the front fender is kind of crumpled up. There's like, how many are there? Enough? 20, 12, something, I don't know. There's a few, 14. Yeah, so 14 blend shapes on just the medium tank. I think this is probably one of the more complex vehicles that we have, and we're not going to be worrying about blend shapes, at least because that's not really something necessary to just get your vehicle in there. I don't think I'll be covering blend shapes anyways, just because they're long and tedious, but I just wanted to explain that it is possible to do that. Like in the actual game, you'll find that there's so many different ways to damage the vehicle, especially in the older version, like Beta 3 or before that. Not only did we have these blend shapes that deformed the geometry, but there was also pieces that you could blow off, like parts of the vehicle could be destroyed or moved about. So all of that is doable, but we're not going to be covering it. We're just going to be covering like the basic structure of how to bring in a model. So inside the layers tab, there are a couple of layers. So let's go ahead and hide the medium tank and antenna left. Let's start from the top, work our way down. So on the very top we have antennas. These are the left and right antennas that are attached, they're almost like separate rigs altogether, separate skeletal meshes, which are added on top of the geometry of the medium tank on a specific bone. So you can do that too if you wanted to. A lot of our vehicles have something similar. So for example, like the towing rings on the Humvee, for example, like they jiggle about based off of something very similar to the antenna system. You can do that if you want. You can explore how these are set up. They're really just basic two-bone system, and one bone is parent of the other. So this is the parent, this is the child. The skin weighting is almost like a gradient. So on the bottom, it's more weighted to the parent bone, and on the top, it's more weighted to the child bone. What ends up happening is that it rotates based off of momentum. The child bone, at least. So that's how that's set up. We don't really need to worry about the antenna system. We're not going to be going over it. So the damage models, if you remember in beta 3 or any previous betas, we had as soon as the vehicle got blew up, huge chunks would basically chuck out in every single direction. So this is how we did that. We what this is basically all the blend shapes enabled, and then we collapse them down into a single geometry so that it looks horribly deformed and beat up. So these get spawned the moment something blows up, or your vehicle blows up. Again, I'm not going to be covering this part because it's a bit too detailed, and it would take a long time to actually set up. But ultimately, these are basically just ordinary static meshes, and nothing fancy besides that. There's no bones, there's no rigs in this. It's just spawning a geometry that whenever it spawns a geometry on a specific bone. So for example, this would spawn on the bone that turns the turret. As soon as that blows up, that bone basically hides whatever skin weighted to it, and it spawns this in its place. So we basically removed that system in beta 4 because it was responsible for a few crashes here and there. So again, we're not going to be worrying about this system, but you can look into how it was set up. Medium tank. Well, we went over the blend shapes. So back to the medium tank. There's a lot of bones on this thing, and that's because most of them, or not most of them, but there's a few. Okay, so we could see right here if you bring out the outliner or whatever the equivalent is in Max. So we have most of them as wheels. Those are really two kinds of bones. We have the wheel bones that spin as well as go up and down, but then we also have the suspension bones that only go up and down. That stuff, that's really like the meat of the rig. Most of the other ones are pretty simple and straightforward. So the bones that start with MT, that means morph target. So they're blend shape bones. So they are blend shape based bones. That's like a tongue twister there. So these bones basically are not skin weighted to anything. They're only there so that whenever it's more so for the code to determine where the vehicle took a hit, and based on that, it'll figure out which is the closest of these bones, and then it'll trigger the right blend shape for them. So they're basically dummy helper bones that are not doing anything other than telling the code where they are, and that's it. And that's really about it. So you could see that most of it is okay. Yeah, there's a lot more morph target bones in here. I'm gonna go ahead and show all of them. Okay, so there's quite a few bones in here, and again, most of them are suspension and wheel bones. Then there's also a ton of blend shape bones. Really, the stuff that we're going to be worrying about is the root bone, the main turret controls, and that's about it. And we're going to set up a few bones for the wheels. So let's take a look at what kind of bones we're really going to need. So I'm going to go ahead and hide most of the stuff that we don't want to see. So, oh, by the way, if you see a bone with DP, that means damage point. That's basically saying if something takes hit, It's more so for like objects that blow off of the vehicle whenever the vehicle is still alive. So again, you would see this in beta 3, but not in beta 4, where certain parts of the vehicle can be torn off. We don't need to worry about those. We're not going to be setting those up because again, that is part of the crashing. So let's go ahead and we're going to hide most of these bones. So all of the morph target bones, the damage points, just so we could see exactly what we need to get this thing up and running. So hide that one. Okay, so this is basically our base rig. We have, let me switch over to helpers. So, taking a look at the bone rig, we have our main root bone, which is all of the wheels, the turret controls, everything is hooked up to this one. So if I move this around, the entire vehicle moves around. Next up we have the main turret yaw. So these bone names, they're completely arbitrary. You can have whatever structure you want to set up, your own naming convention. You can then just swap out the names of the bones in the code, so it's completely irrelevant as to what the bone names are. It's just whatever works for you, whatever works for your project. That's basically all we need to do. We can change all the names on the fly in the code. So yeah, the main turret yaw. What this does is it is our parent for the entire turret. It's also located where the turret is going to spin. So on the Z direction, that's where it's going to rotate. Next up, we have our turret pitch. So this is controlling the barrel, looking up and down. Pretty straightforward. And on top of that, finally, we have the fire or the muzzle flash locator bone. This bone is also skin weighted to the actual barrel because we apply a bit of recoil in the code, or in the animation tree rather. So anytime the vehicle fires, it's going to kick back a little bit. So we're going to get that nice sort of recoil action anytime we fire the damn thing. Finally, we have, this is set up poorly because the bones are exactly the same size, so they're overlapping. You don't want to do that. These are just helpers, by the way, they're not actually bones, just because it's quicker and easier to set up that way. So we have the suspension bone, which just goes up and down because we don't want the suspension to be spinning like the wheel. Okay, and then we have the wheel bone, which is completely independent. It's going to be rotating. So the way it's set up is that the wheel bone is not linked to the suspension bone. Both of these bones, they're actually hooked up to the root bone. They're going to handle independently, and I'm going to show you how to hook up the suspension to the wheels when we get into the animation tree. So that's that. And that's really all we're going to do. Is we're going to keep it fairly conservative in terms of how complex this rig is going to be. So that's basically the end of this first chapter. I'm just giving you an overview of what vehicle rigs look like inside of Max or Maya. It's really not that complicated. That I just showed you all the bones that we really need, and really it's just the root, the turret, or 3 different turret bones, and then the wheel and suspension bones. So that's like 5 bones in total that you have to worry about, or 6. I wasn't counting. But that's about it, so I'm going to wrap this one up right now. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.